When did we decide that responding to a text a few hours later is considered late? And if we're responding the next day, we feel the need to apologize for it. I don't know if it's just me, but I've been finding myself feeling the need to apologize very often for my response times. And I was having a conversation with a friend this week where I encouraged her not to apologize for a late reply. I told her, I said, I feel like I could do a video on this entirely. And we had a conversation about it, and she said, you absolutely should. This is so relatable. I find myself wanting to apologize very often for late replies. And I'm using late in quotations because I'm asking myself, what does late even mean? I've created this timeline in my head of what it means to be a great, responsive friend. And in my mind, that requires an immediate response. And I am learning to remove that feeling from my vocabulary and my life. And there's a couple of reasons why. I don't measure the quality of my friendships based on the speed of their responses. So why do I put this pressure on myself to apologize when I don't have a quick response? And I think technology has evolved to the point where we can see when someone has read a message, we can see when they're typing, we can see when they've last been online. We have mistaken accessibility for availability. And what I mean by that is, yes, I have my phone on me as a mom most of the day. Yes, technically, I am accessible, but that does not mean that I am emotionally available to be present in my thoughtful response back to you in which you deserve as a close friend of mine. Don't get me wrong, I think about this a lot because I've caught myself in moments where I read too quickly, I respond too quickly, I misunderstood something, I missed something that was said, I didn't ask enough clarifying questions to truly understand what was being said. And if I had a moment to sit down and really just be present in reading that text and response, I would be able to be present as a friend in my response. And I know as a friend, I would value that so much from my friends. And I find when I'm not quick in my response, my mind races and I worry about, what if they think I'm ignoring them? What if they think I don't care about what they said enough to respond quickly? Or what if they think I'm upset at them, or whatever the story might be? And I am learning, I'm just gonna turn around here. I am learning how to remove that loop that is not helpful in my mind. And instead, I'm intentionally creating space to be present in my responses for my friends and family. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but I also don't want this to get confused with there absolutely being a time and place for a quick response. Whether that's emergencies, whether that's, for example, when Flo's in the care of my mother-in-law or my mother, I absolutely prioritize response and the needs that they might have. So I don't want this to get confused if you have a job where it requires you to be to maintain a certain SLA and response time at absolutely 100%. But I am talking here about this guilt that we place on ourselves, whether it's mom guilt, whether it's guilt as a friend or a family member, to unnecessarily have quick replies. Don't get me wrong, in a perfect world, a perfect relationship building scenarios, we would be spending the maximum amount of time with everyone. We would be picking up the phone for all of our close family and friends and having that real present back and forth dialogue. And that, quite frankly, is quite difficult, especially when you're in a new season of life. You may have a very busy, demanding job. You may work overnight shifts. This type of back and forth, real present dialogue is just not always accessible. With the assumption of, juggling a lot of other things in my life, it has been really helpful to use the James Clear concept. He talks about in his book, Atomic Habits, the concept of habit stacking. So taking a habit that you're trying to do and stacking it on something that you already do, and how that reduces friction in the new habit that you're trying to create. And for me, I've taken that concept and applied it with maintaining and being present for these relationships in my life. I love to stack my voice notes, listening and responses onto my walks. I am very intentional about walks every day, and whether it be also stacking at the gym in between sets, I'm often listening to voice notes, or on the treadmill. If I'm driving to the grocery store, it's a great time to hit play and I listen to it through my car. I've found myself leaning into using voice notes as a mom way more than I ever have before. And what I love about voice notes is that you can hear the tone, you can hear laughter, it allows for pauses, you can hear the excitement, you can get more context of a situation. And there's even been times where tears are shed. Like, it just allows space for some of those micro human elements of back and forth conversation that have just been so wonderful for maintaining authentic communication, when in the blink of an eye, my life has beautifully become a lot more busy and full in the best of ways. This is something that's been really helpful for me in trying to remove the guilt of needing to have a quick response. And again, as I'm making this video, I'm still actively apologizing for a late response. And I'm just really encouraging myself to remove that language. And I'm encouraging you to remove that guilt and language where it's not necessary. Side note, I'm realizing on my walk back that all the background has been is just a series of garbages. So I apologize for that. If I wanted to do this perfectly, I would just walk the one direction of the trail over and over, but ain't nobody got time for that. Maybe you can join me in trying to remove the layer of unnecessary guilt when we, at every point in turn in our lives, are accessible, that we aren't feeling the need to be available at every single point in turn of our day. And again, I couldn't reiterate enough, and you may completely disagree with me on this entire topic, which I encourage. I would love to have a conversation with anyone about this, but this does not excuse responses that are required in a timely manner for a number of different areas of life. This is just me, a humble, regular mom navigating my day-to-day on how I'm just really trying to remove this guilt, especially working to remove guilt that is unnecessary, in my humble opinion. And the reason I am making this video is I hope that it can encourage someone else out there who's navigating a busy season of their life and trying to maintain meaningful connection with other people, that you just give yourself some grace and experiment with new ways to connect, and experiment with new times of day, new areas of your life that you can stack responses onto that make sense for you and leave you feeling fulfilled. Oh, and turning around once again because it looks like there's a jackhammer of sorts going off in the background. One final note that I want to make sure I don't fail to include is this concept is backed by Brené Brown, and she preaches the concept of clear is kind and the importance of clear communication and how that is received as kind by other people. And in this context, how I think about that is, if I'm sending a voice note, and perhaps it's a 8-minute long voice note, but there is something within that I'm looking for a quick response, whether, for example, we had plans to get together with a friend this week. We had to reschedule due to one of the babies being sick. If you need a response about rescheduling plans or whatever it might be, I send another text to say, read this whenever you like, but one quick question I had for you was, if you don't mind getting back to me. I find that helpful as the listener because it helps prioritize the timeliness of a response required by the other person. And it also helps me feel like I'm taking pressure off of the other person by letting them know, okay, just the specific part of the voice note, I need your answer response, but take your time in listening to the rest of the novel. And so again, that just goes back to like being clear is kind. If you need a quick response, absolutely communicate that. If you don't need a quick response, absolutely communicate that. And I do find myself doing that more and more as I've been leaning into this corner of my life. And I just wanted to share a couple thoughts as I've been having this conversation with a couple of my friends, and it feels like we are all feeling it. Everyone's feeling overwhelmed with the pressure of responses. And if you take one thing from this video, I encourage you to lift that guilt off of yourself where it makes sense in your life. And if you made it this far, this has likely struck a chord of some kind in your life. And I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear more about how you're thinking about this, maybe where you disagree, maybe where you see a couple gaps in my thinking, because if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm really thinking more and more about the value of connecting, meaningful connection with one another as our world continues to move at speed in so many other areas, especially at a time where it feels more difficult now than ever to do so. So these are a couple things I'm thinking about, a couple things that have helped me, and thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time. Maybe not in front of the garbage cans as often. I'll find another place. See you next time.